How's it going, everybody? This is Trinity Collins, your host for the Podcast Island, episode number 19. This podcast can be viewed only on YouTube at the One Man Island Productions YouTube channel. Clips of the podcast can be viewed on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. I believe the last time I spoke with you people was a couple of weeks ago. Me and Daryl Hall discussed celebrities, ranging from recording artists, musicians, politicians, actors, directors, and much more. Athletes also fall into this category as well. However, there is one person that I will talk about who's also a celebrity, appeared in many commercials, and that is the head football coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, Deion Sanders. Now, Deion Sanders' first season as the head coach for the Colorado Buffaloes started out pretty strong. They went 3-0, ended up being 4-2 at one point, and then the wheels just fell off fell out the wagon. Things crash landed, and they ended at the end of the season on a pretty sour note. The Colorado Buffaloes faced the Utah Utes in their season finale a few weeks ago. Utah defeated Colorado 23-17. Shedeur Sanders did not start in that game due to injury. Utah outgained the Colorado 329 yards to 262. First downs, third down efficiency, plays and time, that percentage, all those factors beat Colorado. So Colorado finishes the season with a 4-8 record. This makes it the 7th losing season for the Buffaloes in the last, decade. It's also important to mention that this is the last year for the Pac-12 Conference. The Buffaloes will officially join the Big 12 Conference next season. The Big 12 will compete as a 16-team conference for the first time in 2024, next season. Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah will become members of this conference in the summer of 2024, joining Baylor, BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, and West Virginia. So what do we know about the Buffaloes this season? Well, here's what we do know. Despite the fact that they finished the season on a downswing, there was improvement. They did rebrand themselves. They did get a lot more hype for the university. Deion Sanders installed a little bit more of a confidence boost, a little bit of hope for the program that was pretty much dead. That at one point, I believe in the 80s, maybe in the late 90s, was a national champion. But last season and seasons prior, they have been a forgotten program in the entire country. Nobody wanted to see this team by accident. So the offense this year scored 28 points per game. Last year they scored 15. This year they averaged 363 yards per game, which is up from 281 last year. Passing yardage went up 3,536 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, 4 interceptions for Shedeur Sanders. Last year, 2,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Third down conversion was up this year. Shedeur Sanders was sacked 56 times, though, which is an issue. Attendance grew. So overall, there were improvements. The only thing that I guess we expected, and this is based off the first few weeks of the season, was more wins and potentially a bowl game. But as time went on, as Oregon, UCLA, USC, some of these teams with experienced coaches, a foundation at the program, they found a way, they found the weak spots, and took advantage of them. And here's what I also know. People are going to dance on their 2023 graves. Call them overrated, say Deion Sanders is a fraud. You could put my name in that hat also because I overrated the team a little. I had them going 8-4 or 7-5 and make a bowl game this year. Unfortunately, I was wrong. However, all hope is not lost. Remember, it's just year one of a rebuilding program. The silver lining is Now, look, remember, they are going to be a part of the Big 12 conference. There won't be a USC. There won't be a Oregon. There won't be a Washington. There won't be a UCLA. That also doesn't mean that the teams that they're facing in their new conference aren't formidable as well. A lot of those teams are very talented. Their programs have been set in stone for years, and their coaches are very, very good. And their recruiting in their certain regions of the country are very, very stable, especially in the southern and western states. But can they beat Arizona State? Can they beat TCU? Can they beat Utah? Can they beat Cincinnati? Probably can. I mean, they don't need to go undefeated next year for them to prove anything. They just need to incrementally improve their wins. And that doesn't mean that as of right now, the Deion Sanders experiment is a failure. Look, most businesses don't turn a profit in their first year of operation. You have to secure a target audience. You need an identity, and you need to be consistent in progress in things, or for people to take notice of what you're doing. Jim Harbaugh, who's the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, before he even got to the NFL, he was a head coach of Stanford. It took till year 3 for them to get to a bowl game. Jimmy Johnson, who was a head coach at the University of Miami, when he got to the NFL, it took till I think year 3 for them to make the playoffs, let alone a winning season. Tony Dungy, it took a while for them to rebuild the sad Buccaneers. Now I understand that the last two were NFL examples. And the first one was a college example. Let's stick with college. I went on Bleacher Report and I made a list of the colleges and universities that were bad, and then with the right coach, patience, and excellence, recruiting, the university got back on its feet as far as their football program is concerned. Now, this isn't a long list, and this doesn't mean that whatever accomplishments were made in year 1 or in year 2 or 3 are going to be equivalent to what Deion might do next year or the year after. These are examples of what patience and what a little time does for somebody. So in 1951, head coach Bobby Dodd had different ideas. His Georgia Tech team was 11-0-1 and had embarked on a 31-game unbeaten streak. But before then, they were pretty much at the bottom. I think they only won 1 or 2 games. One example of what happens when a little time, a little recruitment, and what happens when you get the right players in, the right staff can do. South Carolina would again become irrelevant under Lou Holtz, but it wasn't in his first season in 1999. That year, the Gamecocks went 0-11. Lou Holtz used some of the magic gleaned from his days at Notre Dame, and South Carolina was winning more games than anyone expected. In the 2000 season, not only did South Carolina win 8 games, but they beat one of the top teams in the nation, Ohio State, in the Outback Bowl. In 1998, the Rainbow Warriors finished 0-12 for the first time in program history, and Hawaii fired coach Fred Van Alpen. As a season conclusion, the Rainbow Warriors then made one of the greatest moves in their history by hiring June Jones. I don't know if you guys know who June Jones is, but I'm pretty sure he was the head coach of the Falcons at one point in the NFL. So eventually he guided Hawaii to a 9-4 record in his first season, capturing a share of the WAC championship and topping Oregon State in a bowl game. So going from 0 wins to a conference championship game and a bowl victory, that's impressive. And let's make something very, very clear. I'm not saying I need a Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Orange Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Cotton Bowl appearance, or even a win. The goal next season is 6 wins plus. What that does is show progress. You've reached a bowl game, which will bring, if he reaches a bowl game, hypothetically, let's just say it's a Sun Bowl, or a Outback Bowl, or even a Gator Bowl, for example. Once you reach one of those games, A, you bring more eyes to your program, revenue boost, respect for the program. Once the kids start seeing a change, progress, and who knows, maybe Colorado brings some of their athletes. I don't need like 13 from a certain school. I don't need that. I just need like maybe one or two, a receiver, a lineman, maybe a corner, a defensive lineman, quarterback, linebacker. Who knows? I mean, again, manage your expectations. It's one thing to expect to get maybe an interview for a job. It's another thing to expect a national championship in year 3. All right, come on. Colorado, again, hasn't had the program and the foundation for a long time. It's hard. I don't need an Ohio State program right now. I don't need an Alabama program, Oklahoma, or any of these schools. Clemson, Florida State, stuff like that. But can you give me like maybe 2, maybe 4? Constantly increase that number year after year? I mean, hell, some of the best line. And here's the thing: some people say, "Oh, can you get some, the best talent in all positions of the field for your school?" Hey, look, Penn State hasn't been in a national championship game in years, decades, but they always had great linebackers. Hell, some schools bring out the best quarterbacks or the best receivers. Some schools get it right. So, what do the Colorado Buffaloes need to get right? What do they need to improve themselves next season? Well, first of all, allow me to establish that I'm not a recruiter. I'm not an analyst. I'm not as phoned into college. It's a college atmosphere as any analyst like Desmond Howard or RG3 or those guys. But I will say this: I'm not blind to what I see. And when I first watched the Colorado versus TCU opening day game, they played great. Their skill position players were on fire. Shedeur Sanders had a heck of a game. Their secondary players has talent, but the one area that really bothered me, and when I was listening on the broadcast, Joe Klatt on the broadcast, he even mentions the inexperience and the lack of depth on the offense and defensive lines. Now, as a fan, I pay attention to that, and it's important that they need to improve and beef up that area of the line. The last thing you want is to see your quarterback get sacked nearly 60 times. The last thing you want to see is a quarterback go into the NFL beat up. Because odds are he ain't going to have the career like Brady or Favre, Manning, Breeze. Some people ignore the offensive line sometimes, and it really bothers me because, yes, they don't score touchdowns. They don't always have the best commercials, except for Jason Kelce. But offensive linemen matter, and they should not be ignored. When you are constantly winning at the point of attack, picking up blitzes, disrupting the runs, key sacks, that usually tells me how the game is going to play, because that's the first line of attack. It's pretty much the foundation, in my opinion, of every offense. How well do you block, and how well do you get after the opposing team's quarterbacks? And that's going to be a difficult thing to do because, again, Colorado isn't Alabama. Colorado isn't Florida. Colorado isn't Ohio State or Michigan, Alabama, Georgia. They are not these USC, UCLA. They're not these West Coast, Southern states, or even the Midwest teams that have like that small crush of Midwest teams that have a great foundation and known for winning. They don't. So that's why you heard a lot of rumblings of Colorado right now losing some recruiting power. And a lot of people are leaning towards with Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning, for those who don't know, is the head coach of the Oregon Ducks. I don't know if you guys remember this, but at one point he was talking about how the Buffaloes and Deion Sanders are substance and just doing things for clicks. And some people are thinking that maybe he has a point. Maybe Deion Sanders doesn't know how to coach. He doesn't know how to recruit. He doesn't know how to do all that stuff. Look, coaching isn't easy, but at least he had a fighting chance. I mean, like, Dan Lanning came from Georgia. I mean, he's gonna probably get more respect than most guys. But here's the list of athletes that decommitted to Colorado University, and who like I think recommitted to Colorado University that was lost, and like there were I think it was a quarterback named Danny O'Neal and a 2025 quarterback commit Antoine Hill Jr. And they also lost a 3-star running back, Jameis Wilder, who decommitted to Colorado. Right now, I think Jordan Seaton shocked the world by committing to Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes, especially after Colorado was initially kicked off the final list. The generational talent and highly coveted 5-star sits near the top of the 2024 recruiting class and has fielded several offers. Seaton reportedly turned down a multi-million-dollar offer from Tennessee before heading to Colorado. Sources told BuzzBeat also last week that they also got a talented lineman. They also got a receiver, 4-star receiver, who committed to Colorado on Sunday, adding to the Buffaloes' rebound on a 2024 recruiting trail under Coach Deion Sanders. Just relationship with Sanders, Miller told to, that's the guy's name, Dre John Miller, told to ESPN what stood out the most. And I felt the connection instantly. I feel like that was God giving me the sign. So let's do a little recap because I might have come across a little jumpy. Seaton and Miller give Sanders and his staff a much-needed boost with the early signing period looming. They also acquired many other talents, like I think they also acquired a receiver. They lost a receiver, lost a lot of like decommits, but they also gained some of them, a lineman and a receiver. So that's just the reality of recruiting, I guess, is what we're learning right now, is that some guys are going to commit. Some guys are going to not commit. Some guys are going to... You're not always going to get the 5-star recruits. And that's just the reality of it. And I'm pretty sure that happens to Alabama, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Arizona State. I'm pretty sure this happens way often than we think. But because Deion Sanders is such a prevalent force in the media, and he has a very charismatic way about him that you can almost just get immersed into everything he's saying, people thought that his ability to recruit the top athletes in the country coming out of high school or be a year before high school will be easy. But then again, are you going to convince a kid from Florida to come to Colorado? Are you going to convince a kid from California to come to Colorado? Are you going to convince a kid who grew up in Pennsylvania, who probably grew up watching the Penn State, to convince to come to Colorado? These are honest questions. And these are questions that I think every kid who's an athlete thought about when they're going to play sports in college. Regardless if it's volleyball, baseball, basketball, football, swimming, wrestling, hockey. I think I mentioned volleyball already. Water polo, crew, golf. It doesn't matter. Location matters. Marketability matters. Attractability matters. Some kids want to stay in state. Some kids want to leave. Some kids want to go to the best school. Some kids, it doesn't really matter as long as they get a chance to play. Why do you think the transfer portal is such a popular thing nowadays? Is because kids are no longer waiting 2 or 3 years on the bench to get a shot. They feel like they can play right now, so they're going to transfer out of Oregon or out of Texas or Tennessee or Oklahoma State, and they're going to go to another school that needs a quarterback, that needs a running back, that needs a wide receiver right now. And it's an easy transition. And it's understandable. And this reminds me of, I guess, the Green Bay Packers, New Orleans Pelicans, Oakland Athletics. And in this case, the down market or the programs, whatever program is in a very small market or are not prevalent, are going to often dictate what players you're going to get. And here's an example. Say if you're a 5-star recruit and you grew up near the University of Miami. Do you really want to go to Colorado? You can go to the U, who has a reputation. I mean, the University of Miami isn't what it used to be, even when Ed Reed was there. It's not the same university when Ray Lewis or when Jimmy Johnson was there. It's not the same university, but it has a reputation. There's still history. And to a degree, there's still a foundation there. They still play in the same facility even back during when they're winning national championship games. And there's just a level of awesomeness when you play for University of Miami. It's like the college football version of the Raiders. That's basically pretty much what it is. Both in, well, I guess not necessarily, but in certain aspects, they both in warm weather climates. There's a level of attitude and respectability and intensity that they both play at. The difference is that one is in a bigger market. But other than that, it's still the same thing. Different coats of paint. And hey, there was a time where, no, think about this now. People say Deion Sanders probably can't recruit all these top players. Look, Texas at one point wasn't getting a lot of top talent from its own state. And I'm not joking. Matthew Stafford went to Georgia. He's from Texas. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of athletes that came up in Texas that went outside of the state and played. Texas is pretty much, I'm pretty sure it's like football then church down there. It's like it's God and football. That's all that matters down there. And then guns. But that's besides the point. The point is that right now Colorado is in a state where they are going to lose out on some 5-star recruits because of who they're recruiting against. Colorado is going to be has to basically develop and establish a foundation of a program. Again, let's use NBA as an example. Where would you rather play, Milwaukee or Miami? So as I wrap up this podcast, allow me to say one thing about the hating I think Deion Sanders got during the season, and to a degree he's still getting. Cat Williams once said during one of his stand-ups that you need haters because that's what their job is to do, is to hate. If you have 30 haters, you better try to get to 50. And I think my mother once told me that sometimes the haters is just what you need because the haters are going to pay attention to you more than most of your fans. Look, I understand that Deion Sanders has a presence. There's a presence about him. He made a lot of sound bites. People were rubbed the wrong way by his overall coaching. And I understand that because they are the new kids on the block. But understand this also. You shouldn't be hating on Colorado. You should be thanking them for bringing more eyes to college football and bringing more eyes to the product. Colorado's double overtime victory against Colorado State, which ended like in the early hours of Sunday morning. And remember, they're playing on the West Coast. So if you're watching, they started the game probably at 9 o'clock. That's 12 p.m. on the East Coast. And it drew 9.3 million viewers, making it the most watched late night college football game ever on ESPN. And it was a week 3 game. It was a September game. This wasn't a national championship game. This wasn't a Rose Bowl. This wasn't an Orange Bowl, a Sugar Bowl, a Fiesta Bowl. This was a week 3 game. I think Colorado State was like 1-2 at the time. And they were one of the bottom feeders of the national conference. Sorry, the national football. In the NCAA. Hell, the Colorado when they were ranked, I mean, their games against TCU and Nebraska averaged 8 million viewers for Fox. They brought the eyes, they brought the money, they brought the revenue, they brought the advertising, they brought the sex appeal, they brought the celebrities. Think about this now. Celebrities were going to Boulder, Colorado. What kind of crap is this? The moral of the segment is this, especially when you're dealing with kids and men who's more relevant than 100 coaches in Division I football. Stop trying to tear these guys down. They bring eyes, stories, and drama and all the stuff that we love. This is all the stuff that we love about sports, is that it's a natural, dramatic sport. And he just added more fuel to the fire, and he made it more relevant. He made Colorado relevant. It's easy for him to make Florida State relevant because it's always been relevant. Even during down years, they're still going to get majority of the recruits because it's Florida State. Florida hasn't won a national title in a decade plus. Still get top recruits. Michigan hasn't won a national title in a long time. Still get recruits. That's just the way it is. I mean, Shannon Sharp once said that, I think, maybe Shannon Sharp said it, but I know somebody said that Oregon has more uniforms than championships. Nebraska probably gets more better players than Colorado. TCU was in the national title last year. So here's my final statement. This will be my final statement before I conclude this podcast. Deion Sanders right now is behind the 8 ball in college football. Remember, they are joining the Big 12 Conference with Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, Baylor, BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, and West Virginia. Not only that, you have California schools and the Southern schools, the SEC. It's hard to convince people to come to Boulder, Colorado. I said it before about 10 times on this podcast. And you're asking them a lot to play for a program that has no established foundation. It's going to take time, and Deion is going to need to exercise patience to prove to people that he can develop players, win games, and to get to bowl games. It's going to be a long process. This team was 1-11 in 2022. This past season, they are 4-8. Now, listen, that's improvement. The team is way better now than it was last year. And they're better off this year and going forward probably in this direction. They have a better quarterback. They have better skill players. Travis Hunter is a stud on both sides of the ball. They have a talented safety. They need better skill position players. They need better linemen. The big uglies on front, they need to improve on that. But if next season they go 6-6, that's a ball game. If they go 7-5, that's a winning season. That's a big plus. Small steps get you there. Sometimes you need a few false steps to find your footing, to find the proper footing. It's not going to happen in 1 year. Tom Brady wasn't an overnight success, even though it seemed like that. But remember, he was on the bench in year 1 and he was just learning. Peyton Manning took years before he even got his first playoff victory. The Lions, and not even pro sports, college sports, it takes time. It shouldn't be. Nothing great happens overnight. Can I get lucky? Sure, but consistency happens over time, and we have to be patient. I would like to thank all that have listened to the podcast Island episode number 19. This podcast can be viewed on YouTube at the One Man Island Productions YouTube channel. Clips of the podcast can be viewed on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. I am your host, Trinity Collins, and I will see you guys in the future.